Hallo Jens, hallo Rico, hallo Publikum da draußen. Wir sind heute am Tag 4 der VELOWeek 2020, dein Fahrradfestival at Home. Ich bin total happy, dass ich am 4. Tag schon mit dabei sein kann, dass wir viele super Sessions schon hatten. Und heute haben wir ein smartes Thema. Wir haben Smart Cycling, Smart Infrastructure zu Gast. Genau, Verkehrsplaner Jens und sein Kollege Rico aus den Niederlanden. Hallo. Die gehen auch gleich mit rein. Ihr stellt euch selber vor und legt los mit eurem Programm. Das wird eine dichte Stunde. Denkt dran, ihr könnt gerne über Facebook und hier im Chat euch mit uns unterhalten. Nebenher, wir versuchen dann bei Gelegenheit die eine oder andere Frage mit reinzunehmen, wenn es passt. Okay, Jens, ich übergebe an dich.
Ja, vielen Dank, Hille. Ich freue mich, dass so viele Zuschauer und Zuschauerinnen hier online den Weg zu uns gefunden haben. And I will switch in English because we have a guest from the Netherlands. We have Rico Andriesse in this panel from a Dutch engineering company called Goudappel Coffeng. And yeah, we will shortly present ourselves. And afterwards, I will give a brief introduction in the German situation. And then we will start getting into discussion with Rico, because he's a real expert for Dutch solutions and as well smart Dutch solutions. And I will share my screen. Let's see if that works. Now we have this introduction page here. And now you should see my laser pointer. And yes, let's start with introducing ourselves. And I would say, Hille, maybe you can again say 1 to 3 sentences about you, and then Rico will introduce himself, and then me.
Okay, ich starte mal gleich wieder auf Deutsch. Genau, ich bin hier vom VELO Konzept. Wir machen Beratung rund ums Fahrrad. Wir organisieren Festivals wie dieses hier. Ich selber bin erst seit einem Jahr im Team und bin mega motiviert, die Architektur in die Fahrradwelt zu bringen. Und deswegen freue ich mich besonders über das Thema heute, das die Planung und den Raum zusammenbringt. Danke, Jens.
Yeah, thanks, Hille. Rico.
Hello, everybody. I'm Rico Andriesse, a traffic planner at Goudappel Coffeng, which is an engineering and traffic consultancy company, biggest one in the Netherlands. And I'm very happy to have been asked to tell something about cycling and traffic management in your Berlin situation today. Thank you very much, and thank you for joining all.
Yeah, thanks, Rico. My name is Jens Blume. I work for APPM. It's a Dutch consulting company, working since about 25 years in the field of mobility in the Netherlands. And recently, they founded an outpost in Berlin, where I am now in charge of all the cycling topics covering Germany. So let's start. I will first tell a bit about the German situation, and then, as I said, we will get into discussion with Rico. So when we were thinking of doing this webinar, we asked ourselves what actually is a smart intersection, and we thought maybe it's as simple as that. That everyone gets safely and conveniently from A to B. But if we have a closer look on this, especially in a dense urban area, what does it mean that everyone shall get safely and conveniently from A to B? It definitely needs to be inclusive. So not only the people who are able to drive a car want to get from A to B, but as well children, elderly people, impaired people, people who cannot see, people who cannot walk, and so on. So an junction, an intersection needs to serve not only car drivers. And if you have a deeper look on the safety issues, it quickly gets clear as well that it is a wise idea to not mix heavy traffic with children. So the design needs to separate uneven modes of transport. And then if we look on the word conveniently, what does it mean? It means most probably that you don't want to wait too long at the intersection until you can cross it. So the waiting time needs to be quite short for everyone, and which means as well, if everyone would drive a car and only one person would sit in a car, it wouldn't work in a dense area. So you need to design an intersection that prefers more efficient ways of transport, like cycling or public transport. So the space efficiency is as well very important. So let's have a look at the standard situation in Germany. Usually we have intersections like you see here in the picture, where everyone gets green at the same time, following one direction, like shown with the arrows. So cars who go straight, who go left, who go right have green, and as well cyclists and pedestrians all have green to the same time. And only sometimes there are separate left turning lights, and almost never there are separate right turning lights. And that means there's a built-in conflict zone, like shown here on the picture. You see it, the conflict zone is the turning motor traffic wants to go right, and the pedestrians and cyclists wants to go straight forward. And it's not only a built-in conflict zone, it's actually a typical point of death. So the typical situation is that the motor traffic turns right, and cyclists and pedestrians go straight forward, and many people have been killed in Germany, and it still continues. It's the main killing factor for cyclists in Berlin, and 5 out of all 9 deadly accidents, here is written 8, but we had a deadly accident yesterday, so we are at number 9 now. So 5 out of 9 deadly accidents in Berlin in 2020 shows a scenario. And as well, pedestrians regularly get killed via the scenario. So already German officials saw this problem and tried to find a way out of this situation. And you probably know this design shown here on the picture, where you have a bike lane in the middle. So, and the idea behind was to sort the traffic in front of the intersection, and to get rid of the problem. But this is even more dangerous. So the conflict still exists, just with higher speed and with a longer unprotected lane, and many other problems. I won't go into the details here. And as well, pedestrians do not face any change. So the pedestrian situation is not touched at all with this design. And as well, it must be suitable for 11-year-old kids, because in Germany we have the law that kids that are older than 10, they must use the bike lane. They are not allowed to use the footpath. And if you look at this picture, you quickly see that it's not a good idea to mix trucks and 11-year-old kids. So the design more or less failed, and at least Berlin accepted this already. And they announced just recently in May that they won't use this design anymore, and that they want to use other designs, and especially they want to separate different kinds of traffic with separate traffic light phases. Let's have a look on separate traffic light phases. Do they exist in Germany already? And the answer is nearly nowhere, but there are some exceptions. Like, for example, here in Berlin, at a few entry ramps to motor highways, you have separate light phases. You see here the cyclist, he has green, and all the motor traffic has a red traffic light. But there are lots of problems with these intersections, because the traffic light phases are static. You have very long waiting time for cyclists and pedestrians, and an extreme short green phase. And if you would want to scale this up in Berlin, you would have long waiting times if you want to go, for example, 5 kilometers from A to B. So it needs to be optimized. Better solutions are needed. So let's have a brief look to the laws in Berlin. What do they say to better solutions or to intersections at all? So since about 2 years, a law called Mobilitätsgesetz is in charge, and it gives active mobility and public transport always priority, which is great. It includes the Vision Zero, and it's not just one of many guidances, but it's the guidance to any operation of traffic administration, which is great as well. And the law includes clear solutions for planning conflict. So if there's a planning conflict in between motor traffic and cycling infrastructure, active mobility and public transport will always get priority. As well, moving traffic is prioritized ahead of non-moving traffic, which means cycle infrastructure is more worthy than parking slots, which is great as well. And this is very interesting. Every year, 30 dangerous intersections are to mitigate with applying state-of-the-art technologies and knowledge. So this is a really big task for the state of Berlin. As well, black spots are to mitigate with short, mid, and long-term actions. And protected bike lanes are to build on every main road up to the year of 2030. And nearly finally, appropriate infrastructure, traffic management, and the right communication is to use to gain high objective and subjective safety for cyclists. So you shall not only be safe, but you shall as well feel safe, which is very important for the people who right now still fear to get a bike and move around with a bike. And there's many more in the law. So basically, the number of the fatal accidents, and at least in Berlin, the Mobilitätsgesetz, give a clear mandate to use other safer designs of intersections. And there are many possibilities, as you probably know. So for example, roundabouts, if you have more or less less than 35,000 vehicles using that junction, or as well, you could add another level, another plus level, or another minus level, like you see here on the pictures. But there are many spots where you cannot do this, and where you would need to use a regular intersection. And in my opinion, right now the best design for these intersections are the Dutch protected intersections with separate phases that minimize the conflicts very well. But still, they face big fears in Germany, for example, because of the long waiting time. And in my opinion, smart design and smart technologies can help erasing these fears. But as well, on the other hand, smart high-tech will only work as long as you create a smart low-tech base layer. So now we will have a look at these low-tech and high-tech layers, and afterward that we will get into discussion with Rico. So let's have a look on the low-tech elements of protected intersections. I will move here this window away so that I see everything. Okay, and let's continue. So at a smart intersection, at a protected intersection, probably you know these pictures, you have always these islands here and here, and they help to reduce the turning speed of traffic, and as well they create a safe distance for the parallel traffic. So the traffic that flows here and the cyclists that flow here, they are very well separated, and even if a kid falls off his bike, it won't get killed by a truck because there's enough space. So the keyword here is forgiving infrastructure, and as little speed as possible. So the next element is the stop bar for the cyclists, which is placed far into the intersection. So here, as far as possible, it is placed into the intersection, which means that you have a very short crossing area for the cyclist. Only this distance needs to be signalized with traffic lights, which makes the clearing time little, and creates and makes it raises the capacity of the intersection. And if you compare it, for example, if you would place the stop bar here in front of the pedestrians, and here, you would have a way longer crossing time, and everyone would need to wait way longer at this intersection. So that's why the Dutch uses zebras here and not traffic lights to sort the pedestrian cycling crossing. So let's continue. Right, as I said, you have the zebras here, and I think it's quite fair to give pedestrians priority ahead of cyclists because they are the most vulnerable participants of traffic. So I think it's best giving them priority. And as well, if you use the zebra there, which is quite clever, you can have green light in this direction and green light in this direction. So you are more flexible in whom you give green light, so you can move more people to the same time, which is smart, I think, as well, but smart low-tech. And what you see here is definitely needed to do better in Germany if we adapt this design. So if pedestrians want to cross here, they need at least 2 meters space here. For example, people with a Kinderwagen or with a wheelchair. I think in Germany it wouldn't acceptable to build it like this. As well, it's not allowed. You would need at least 2 meters to have a zebra here and then a traffic light here. So not everything in the Netherlands is perfect, and we are now in the situation in Germany that we could learn and do things better here. So let's continue. We have as well the free right turn for cyclists, which is clever as well. In Germany, usually cyclists who turn right need to wait, and with this design, they always can turn here freely and as well here. And then you have separate traffic light phases, which eliminate the right turning conflict to 100%. And completely for everyone, not only for cyclists, not only for pedestrians, but for everyone. So it's a quite safe design. Okay, and now I will start talking to Rico, and probably you have questions as well. So feel free to put them into the chat, and Hille will collect them, and we can ask Rico because he's a specialist of traffic management in the Netherlands. So Rico, we saw now this these low-tech elements of protected intersections with separate traffic light phases. And German traffic engineers are afraid if we would use such a design in Germany, the waiting time would get extremely long for everyone. And that might be true for static traffic light programs, but the Dutch usually use dynamic systems. Is that right?
Yes, that's right, Jens. That's the way the design normally is made, and the way the crossings are being designed. Is almost all crossings in the Netherlands, at least the ones with cyclists and pedestrians, do have a dynamic way of organizing the traffic. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And can you explain how that works? Like which technologies do exist to not only detect cars, but as well to detect bikes and pedestrians, and as well which technologies work most convenient so far in the Netherlands?
Yeah. On the next slide, you
can slide forward.
Yeah, please.
Uh-huh.
And maybe it's good to start a little higher skill level than the crossing itself, the intersection itself, because most of the smartness is not in the system or is not in the intersection, but is in the network planning, which has been done before. So if you really want a smart, intelligent intersection and a way to organize your traffic, you should start at a network level. So there are some steps you could do, and the first one is, well, start taking active mode seriously. So move from cars to Swayze, where start with Skyping, walking, and cycling, or maybe in German, Skyping, Laufen und Fahrraden. And if you start taking these active modes seriously, and take them seriously, both on a network level and on intersection level, it will be much easier to organize your traffic system. Not easy in a way that it's you have less problems in your design, but that there are better solutions to find. The next step is optimize your car network. Not every road should be a main road. Make choices in the network planning. So make a lot of roads with low traffic volumes for cars and buses. Make them 30 kilometers per hour zone. So the number of cars will drop even more, and that you can you don't need traffic lights at all. And sometimes it's possible to have, for example, 3-arm intersections, which are much easier to organize than 4-arm intersections. In the preparation of this presentation, I was looking for examples from the Netherlands for 4-arm crossings to compare to the Berlin ones, and it was very hard to find any 4-arm intersections into an urban environment. They do, of course, they do exist, but by far the most intersections in urban environments are 3-arm intersections, which do have much more capacity and are much easier to organize. The next step is think if you really need a traffic light. You already mentioned that, Jens. Maybe you can have a roundabout or another way to organize your intersection. Try thinking of a smaller intersection, because that works 2 ways around. If you have your intersection smaller, you need less lanes. The times of the organization will be shorter, which will make it easier to organize it all, which makes it easier to make your intersection smaller, and again and again and again and again. And the bad thing is it works the other way also. If you need extra lanes because you need more capacity, this intersection will be bigger, and so on and so on and so on. Then optimize your choices. So do not prioritize everyone. Choose your battles. Not every intersection should be a maximum bus priority crossing. Not every intersection needs absolute priority for cyclists or need very convenient pedestrian crossings. Not every crossing should prioritize all traffic, car traffic always. Make your choices. So choose what you want. Choose what you want. And last one, well, build in some flexibility and detection in your in your crossing.
So what I understand, there's a lot of things to do before you really start to implement high-tech elements.
Yeah, start thinking first, make choices,
Yeah.
and then use this flexibility. Yeah.
And if you did all these steps, and how does it work in details? And in Germany, we detect cars. We are able to detect approaching cars, but I don't know any example. Maybe someone from the audience that pedestrians and cyclists are detected in front of the intersection. Which technologies usually are used in the Netherlands to do
That's
this?
something that's shown on the next slide, Jens. So the most important thing is, and that's what you in Berlin already are doing, is detect the cars, because by their numbers and their mass, their volume, that's still the most important thing to organize in this kind of intersections. If you wouldn't have cars, you wouldn't need those traffic lights. So make sure that they are detected well, both before and on the intersection. Next one is know where the buses are. So make sure that you have some kind of system to detect buses on an early stage. But for example, by using radio or another system to know when the buses are coming, so you can optimize your intersection with that. Detect cyclists. Do that before the intersection. Do it on the intersection itself, and ask cyclists also when they are waiting to push a button to be sure that they are still there. But you could gain very much with an early detection, so you can give green light to cyclists when a cyclist is arriving.
Mm-hmm.
And you can do quite a lot of things to reward cyclists for pushing this button, so it is not an in vain action. So make the light green, or make the green light right away when it's possible. Maximize it, or at least have a maximum waiting time. So make sure that cyclists never have to wait longer than, say, 1 minute or 45 seconds. Use this push button to make it also a pull to halt yourself, and to help cyclists to stop and to gain speed again. Make sure that the light for cyclists is very visible, good, so it's very clear which light is meant for you, and have a waiting time indicator, so you know how much time you'll need to wait, and it's more acceptable to wait a little bit.
Mm-hmm. And if you have an intersection where all the approaching traffic, not only cars but as well as cyclists and pedestrians, are detected, do you know how much more efficient an intersection would work if you would do so?
Could you repeat the question again, Jens?
Yeah, sure. The question was how can you increase the efficiency of an intersection with a dynamic detection system that detects not only cars but as well pedestrians and cyclists?
Yeah, well, in principle it's quite easy. The principle is as easy as that. If you have a flexible detection, you'll know if there's a car coming, or there's a cyclist, or there's a pedestrian wanting to cross, and there's no need to give green light to somebody who's not there. So you are never waiting in vain, which is also good for the acceptance of the red light. If you know that you're waiting for something which is it's coming to you, then, well, you will be more happy to wait a little bit, because there might be cars or buses arriving, and it's much better than waiting for nothing.
And you have one figure. Shall I show?
Yeah, that's good.
I think
you can show it
here.
now.
Maybe you can explain what you want to say
what this
here.
figure is a graph of the waiting time combined over all traffic on the crossing, so pedestrians, cyclists, and car traffic in the intersection. And what you see is that the lower the capacity rate of the intersection is, so the more time is left in the intersection, the bigger the gain of the flexibility is. On a little lower rates, you almost half or even more than half your waiting time. And you could say, okay, but that's not interesting because only the peak hour is interesting, but that of course is not true. We have 24 hours a day, and maybe 22 of them have, well, quite reasonable capacity rates, so you can half your waiting time there. And as soon as you come to the really capacity situation, there's not much gain. There's not much to gain because there will always be pedestrians, cyclists, and cars on all directions, and then the gain is very little.
Mm-hmm. So what I understand, every flexible dynamic traffic light system has a rush hour mode, but this is only for like 2 hours in a day important, usually, and the rest of the day, the dynamic system improves the quality of the intersection.
Yeah, that's true. And there's more to that because in the more urban situations where there's a lot of pedestrians and cyclists, not on all car directions is maximum capacity needed, and the other way around on the intersections with a lot of car traffics, maybe on the outskirts of the city near the highway, there's not pedestrians and not cyclists on all times, on all directions all the time. So you can, even on those situations, there's some time to gain.
Mm-hmm. Now we spoke about half an hour. Hille, do you already have collected some questions, or should Rico and I continue? What is the chat saying, Hille?
So there is definitely some traffic here in the chat. So right in the beginning, there was somebody marking that in the cycling lane in the middle of the street is not really a question, in his opinion, of safety, but more or less of comfort only. So I don't know if you want to go into this, because there is some other things. People were talking about like Radwelle, grüne Welle for cyclists, which we miss a lot, but they mentioned examples from Sweden and in Oberhausen in Germany. Somebody knows an example. And then somebody asked for tempo limits in Berlin. Should be really be timed to implement this. Like a 30 km/h speed for all the main roads and even less for the smaller roads. And then there was one question just about understanding. What was Swayze? If you could tell this again, because there were some problems of acoustics at that moment.
Okay.
Maybe you can repeat this, and then I have 2 questions.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, the idea with Swayze, and it's not an existing term, I just invented it myself.
Okay, tell us about your invention. I think we can now hear you again. Yeah,
I don't know what's wrong with the microphone, but Swayze stands for Skyping, Walking, and Cycling. So
Skyping, walking, cycling.
Yeah, so try not to travel too much, and if you have to go by foot or by cycle, especially in these difficult Corona times, use Skype, walking, and cycling.
Okay, so this is just what we do at the moment. We got used to
That's what we do.
Exactly. Okay, that's cute. Okay, maybe the people want to talk about this too. I have really a question for the two of you. Is there, do you know any smart ways to encourage cyclists and pedestrians to stop at the red lights? So to to call in for the SDVO.
Yeah, that will be later on in the presentation. We have some
okay,
tips.
you come to that point.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Then maybe you want to go for this question. I give you one more at the moment. Okay, the question is, so this is what you are talking about, the Dutch people who are used to these signs and to these smart intersections. But what will happen if you implement this in Germany? Is it the culture clash? What will happen? And can you tell us what is the, like, from a German perspective, what is the first step we have to do?
Maybe as well Rico answers this.
Yeah.
In a few seconds, okay.
Yeah, very short time. Well, the most important thing is that you do it well. So if you start doing it, don't do a half pilot, but do the whole of the intersection with all of the pedestrians, cyclists, and cars and buses all together, because that's the only way it works well. And if you do it well, nobody will find out. It's just quite an easy way to organize it. And it's just, you will just find out by not having to wait in vain. So that doesn't need a clash. So the road user normally, if everything works well, we'll just find out that it works. The problem will be, or the difficulty will be, the people who organize the traffic lights. They will have to do a lot more to make sure that all detection works, and it costs money. It's about it's when you have to implement it and implement it in a complete way. To really redesign all of the intersection, it's about €500,000 per intersection. But then you have the money to organize it completely from scratch to make it in a Dutch way, including all the detections.
That figure is interesting. Do you mean €500,000 for everything? Like everything would be included, more or less?
Yeah, more or less. Yeah. And as when you are able to reuse some part of it, it will be cheaper. And of course, the very big intersection will be more expensive. But as a kind of a normal amount, that is what you can keep in mind. Yes.
Can I pop in right away, Rico? So does it make sense to just start with one intersection, or is it just no use? Just start.
Yeah. There's always a first step, and it could be one. There's no need to have a lot of them
at the moment.
But what you normally see is that the intersections are connected with each other, especially to optimize the car traffic. And if you pull one out to make it in a different way, then you'll have to do a lot of changing. So it might be easier to take a whole string of intersections and start rebuilding them one by one. Yeah.
So it should be a domino effect then.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think Hille, you mentioned that someone said this bike lane in the middle of cars is just a
matter of comfort, not safety.
Matter of comfort. And even if it was just a matter of comfort, basically it's as well about safety. If people don't feel comfortable, they won't cycle there. So already this means you need another design, because you need a design that makes people feel comfortably. Otherwise, they won't use the bike. And then I would say we continue a bit with the discussion of Rico. And I wanted to know from Rico which experiences the Dutch made in about the last 10 years, and from what we can learn in Germany, and what we could do better now in Germany with taking that knowledge into account.
Yeah, Thank you, Jens. I put that in another slide, which is the next one. And there are three things that were the main topics in the Netherlands for the last maybe 10 years. One is, and that's quite a general one, but it fits very well in this discussion, is to have less car-oriented cities. So in the city, and maybe in everything what was built before, let's say 1950, we try to orient that more on cycling, walking, and public transport, and less on car traffic. And to be honest, in the rest of the cities and on the highway network, we provided more car capacity there, so that you keep the balance a little bit, and still have car capacity and car accessibility. But in the inner cities, the change was really huge the last 10 years to orient that more on cycling and walking. The next thing we try to do is some accident prevention, so which fits quite easy in this discussion. Some examples: great separation on the busiest roads, so have bicycle tunnels or bicycle bridges. Take traffic lights away, use roundabouts or priority squares, which is a new invention which is shown on the right side of this slide, which looks a little bit like a roundabout but with priority for cyclists and cars on one of the directions. Use smaller trucks in the inner cities, so have big distribution centers. So change from big trucks in the city to smaller ones. Separate bicycle routes. Use, for example, the Fahrradstraße, which is a German invention, but came quite far in the Netherlands. Separate right turning lights. So what we see in your dia, that it's an accident which is quite severe if you have a right turning truck and a through going cyclist. So try to have separate turning lights for cars. Have those separate bicycle paths on intersections. I think maybe 20 years ago we have had quite a lot of intersections like the ones you showed. So with traffic lanes also on the intersections. But they are step by step being rebuilt the last 20 years. If you still have those traffic lanes or very near traffic path, have that ankle facilities, both on the lights, so you can see on the lights that there's a cyclist or a pedestrian crossing, and on the trucks there are some laws to prevent dead angles on trucks. And the last invention, and you see it on the third picture in this slide, is all direction green for cyclists, which works amazingly good as soon as you get used to it. Which is, okay, you stop the cyclist on all directions and give them green light altogether, so there won't be conflicts between cars and cyclists anymore. But you get some conflicts between cyclists for that, but they are never severe. And as soon as you get used to this, it's really nice. And if you like this, have a look at the site of Fietsberaad, which has nice videos of these kind of intersections. And the last, the newest developments is have capacity measures for cyclists, especially in bigger cities like Amsterdam and Utrecht. The number of cyclists have grown so much that there are becoming capacity issues for the cyclists themselves. So we have been studying capacity measures there to give more green light for cyclists, for example.
Yeah, thanks, Rico. I think we need to look a little bit on the time. There are 15 minutes left.
Okay.
I have a lot of questions. So with what should we continue? Like, for example, we in Germany we have issues with this button. When you press this button, especially pedestrians, they don't like to push it because they are, for example, called as Bettelampel. Like, you need to beg for green light, and how comes this is more accepted in the Netherlands? Or are there other ways to detect pedestrians? So what is common there, and why do people like it there and not in Germany?
Okay. Yeah, I have a small slide for that, or maybe two.
Yeah, try to find it.
The next one is about this detection. How could you do it? So there are some ways, detection loops or mats or push buttons at least. And you could use, for example, video or radar with heat, or you could use apps to detect cyclists and pedestrians. But also in the Netherlands, we still have those buttons. And well, with cycling and buttons, it works quite good because you can use this pole on which the button is put to hold yourself, and it's quite comfortable. So I would really miss those buttons if they weren't there anymore. And for pedestrians, well, there's maybe one big reason why those buttons are acceptable in the Netherlands. This is on the next slide. And the easy answer is that, well, as long as you make sure that the green light will appear when you push this button, then it's quite a good solution, and it's not bad to push the button. If you push the button and have to wait again for 2 or 3 minutes, well, then you won't be happy about the button. But actually, it is not about the button. It's about the green lights and the red light you are waiting for.
So it's about waiting time.
Yeah, actually, there was a book published 2 weeks ago in the Netherlands, which was also in this discussion. Isn't it strange that you have to push a button if you're a pedestrian? Why don't we make push buttons for car traffic also? So maybe the discussion is coming.
Okay, and Hille announced that she has some questions.
Yep.
Actually, I have an interesting note from somebody from outside. Somebody mentioned that in Marburg there exists an app called C-Bike for cyclists to have the green wave. I've never heard of that before. You might be interested. I'm asking for the link so I can share it with you afterwards. But Marburg, the C-Bike app.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah.
And then I have a question, but it's just another leads to another discussion. So I don't know if you want to go on further here, or if I can post it right now.
Maybe if it leads to another discussion, not now, because what I see is we have about 7 minutes left.
Okay.
Is there something very important you still want to mention, Rico? Because as well we have a surprise for Berlin, which we will announce in the end, and we should leave about 5 minutes for that, I guess.
And maybe the last thing to say is that on pedestrian organization and designing the intersection for pedestrians, maybe you should do it better than we do in the Netherlands. We have been, and it's the next slide. We have been thinking of organizing traffic lights and organizing intersections for cyclists for 30-40 years now. And maybe sometimes we forgot about the pedestrians a little bit too much. And that was quite easy because, well, those cyclists were not organized, were not so much of them. I think when you wanna redesign your Berlin intersections, well, start doing it right away in the best way, also for pedestrians. So use intelligent systems also to detect building. Maybe have a Berlin app for pedestrians so that they are detected always before they enter the intersection. Maybe use the disadvantage of being a little bit late, use it as an advantage to implement all things that is possible. That's maybe the last mention I wanted to make.
Okay. And yeah, now we have a little surprise for Berlin. Actually, Goudappel Coffeng, and oh yeah, we have lots to show here, but we don't have much time left. Goudappel Coffeng and APPM offer a free replanning of one of 4 deadly intersections where we had a deadly accident with a truck or a bus turning right and a cyclist, and we offer to replan it for free. Of course, we cannot build it, but we can show how the Dutch would do so. And there are 4 of them. One is in Friedrichshain, where we had recently a deadly accident with a turning truck. Petersburger Straße, Ecke Mühsamstraße. And then there's one in Adlershof, Hermann-Dorner-Allee, Ecke Eisenhutweg, where we had in 2018 a deadly accident. And number C is Mariendorfer Damm, Alt-Mariendorf. Actually, it was not a turning truck, but it was a truck who just ran over or passed a cyclist too narrow. It is in Temple of Schöneberg in the south. And number D is Groß-Berliner Damm, Pilotenstraße. I think it is as well in Niederschöneweide, where we had in the beginning of this year this deadly traffic accident with a turning bus and the cyclist. And please, you can challenge Goudappel and APPM, and you can vote for A, B, C, or D. And please just use the Zoom chat to type in which one we should redesign, and we will do it. And while you do this and put your choice into the Zoom chat, maybe Hille, we have about 3 minutes left. Are there questions we could answer very briefly? You are muted, Hille. And I go back one.
Thank you. And now we fixed it. Yeah, there is a new topic actually somebody put in, and that is the question: do you know anything about tactical urbanism for intersections? So I immediately thought of the super blocks in Barcelona, and we posted a link so everybody can go on further with this. But is there anything else that comes up to you when you think of tactical urbanism and intersections?
Maybe Rico, briefly.
Yeah, I have entered this chat now, so I can't find you back. But
Rico was dived right into the.
Yeah, I want to know which.
Okay, I think we're running out of time. I think we're running out of time.
But
soon.
Yeah, more in general. Oh, sorry. You still hear me?
Yes. Yes.
More in general, the discussion on tactical urbanism and on making streets more nice places for people. I think those questions can be done very well when thinking about the network and about what city do I want to be. Do I always want to provide with capacity for cars on all roads in all areas? Do I want 50 kilometers per hour everywhere? And on these discussions, this fits very well. I think as soon as you have decided that a intersection has an important role in the traffic network, either for buses or for cars, but then you come back to the technical part, and then it's quite a question of organizing. But in maybe 60–70% of the city, you could do completely every other things without ever mentioning traffic lights, detection, or whatever technical solution we come up today. But it's a matter of choosing, and that's what they did in Barcelona also.
Mm-hmm. So thank you, Hille, for hosting us. I think the time is now over, and thanks to the audience for taking part. Thanks for all the comments, and we will see the chat afterwards and count manually which intersection was your choice, and we will publish.
I counted already.
Ah, okay.
I counted already while Rico was talking. So I counted 7 times A, 7 times the C. D just got one mentioning.
Mm-hmm.
But the winner is number B with 9.
Oh, really? Uh-huh.
Yes.
Good. Maybe some people still vote. We will see.
Maybe some will still vote. Maybe Jens and Rico, you tell the audience where can they find out which intersection is the winner? Where will you promote this?
We will announce it via our Twitter and LinkedIn channels.
Okay, we post those again. Maybe we did already in the first place, but we will put them again inside the chat. So please copy that out for you, everybody who wants.
Yep. Okay.
And the video, we will post it on Facebook and later on YouTube. And there we will put your LinkedIn and Twitter, blah, blah, blah as well. So that people can find it.
Perfect. Thanks.
And stay in contact.
Uh-huh. We will. And you will hear from us.
Yeah. Thanks a lot. It was very nice to have you here.